Andrew, what were the most significant lessons for you on this entire journey?
Oh, yeah, good question. I think I mentioned the first time we spoke, definitely team sport. That got reinforced for sure. Cross your T's and dot your I's and bounce that off with other members in your team. In this case, it was you, Mish.
Yep.
So as a team, cover those off. And there's a lot to colour. So you've got to just keep going back, double checking. Have I done that? No, I haven't actually. Am I happy with that response? No, I'd like a bit more information. So that was a learning process for sure. I think the old adage, nothing's ever as good as it seems, but nor is as bad as it seems as well. Okay, for me, it's these problems are solvable. So
yeah. They are. Every problem is solvable with a good negotiation.
Yeah.
If you have a good discussion about it, I'm sure there's always a common ground that you can get through. You can find a way of doing that. And it's a little bit like the most significant thing about negotiating the price, negotiating the actual deal. It was a negotiation. It was putting things into perspective, bringing to the selling party what is important for the buying party. And you've got an eager seller, eager buyer. Make the deal happen. It's part of that negotiation.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I learned too, Mish, is when you get to that stage where there's an initial agreement and it may change a bit through due diligence, which it did in our case, and it came down, or what other things are happening, I guess, is back yourself, because you've got a seller. They want to sell the property. You want to buy the property. That's the intent right at that point. So buy it to the point that you are comfortable, potentially reasonable is a word that may come into that between both parties. Don't hold back on things so you think you might upset the seller, because it'll just upset you at some point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is a big boom. If you see something, you don't like it, talk about it, speak about it.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make, that maybe they're too shy, scared, whatever. Put it out there, air it. Yeah, 100%.
You'll soon find out what type of seller they are if you do that. They won't budge and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, before that unconditional date. So that's when you've got a decision to make. Do you want to cop it, or do you stick to your guns, move on? Yeah.
We've actually, I'll tell a little story here. We've actually been dealing with a seller, actually more the agent where the problem is. Saw great property. We've been going ahead. We're waiting to go on contract. We've been negotiating. And their net income is $10,000 higher than our net income. But the long story short is, if you're quiet about that, if you're not talking about it, if you're not drilling down, it's taken us about 3 to 4 weeks to get the true correct numbers out of them on the true correct outgoings. And they keep on deferring by saying, oh, we've already sent you that information. And we just go back and we go back and we go back. And she actually said to me, Mish, you're like a bloody bulldog. And I said, well, that's our job. And the lesson in this is be a bulldog, because these are the questions that the tenant, the agent, the seller don't want you to be asking. Ask the hard questions. Go back and ask those hard questions. So we're fortunate in your case, Andrew, we didn't really have that. But it does happen. The point is that it does happen, and you got to be that bulldog, and make sure that those net figures are 100% correct. And I keep on going back to the figures, because let's face it, this is a numbers game. You can do whatever you want with it. At the end of the day, it's going to affect you in your pocket, and those are the numbers that makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We had a little bit of a chat about the insurance of the property as well. And there was, because of the type of asset, you had a look at a couple of insurers, and you were questioning the insurance, having to do the insurance at unconditional. Do you remember what those conversations were?
Yeah, so there's the insurance of two parts I'd probably ask that in, is the insurance itself and then the timing of the insurance. So the insurance itself, because of the nature of the business, you have to remember the tenants own this property, owner-occupier. They can cover themselves for whatever level of risk they want, to be honest. That it's up to them. But because now you're an investor of the property and you still have them in there doing their business, and the next tenant will come in and perhaps have another business, you have to cover yourself as an investor. So you have to make sure that that coverage is correct, particularly when it comes to replacement cost, obviously, and especially in light of what they may be doing. And given what the tenant does, builds large plastic rainwater tanks and troughs, they're plastic molds. So there's a lot of heat-related work going on inside there. So the insurance policy we got was very different to the insurance policy they had. And essentially, for all intents and purposes, are underinsured. So with the special risks policy that we got, it increased that insurance by, it'd be about $8,000 a year, roughly.
Right.
That was a little tenuous then to accept. But at the
they weren't too happy about that, because the lease they were signing was 100% outgoing, so they had to pay that additional $8,000, didn't they?
Yeah, but I guess at the end of the day, they're shifting as well. They're changing from an owner-occupied to now being a tenant. Yeah. And so it's just changed. It's like, okay, well, right, this is what it's like to be a tenant now. Yeah. It's just one of those aha moments for them. And I'm on the other side going, yeah, there's not really much you can do about this. And I would say the selling agent was very good in actually helping through this process too.
He was.
He was right. He said, yeah, no, you are 100% right. It is what it is. You got to go with it. And I think as well, just the nature of Townsville, and I think it's sort of Mackay upwards, insurance gets tougher and tougher. There's less choice as you go further north because of weather and different things. So, yeah, so that was a learning process. And Terry, who you referred me to and I worked with closely, we had a lot of conversations. He was very good. I went into that deal being very comfortable that, if it all goes pear-shaped, we're going to replace that property and it's going to be a pretty good brand new asset sitting on that hard stand when we're done. So, well, we got to remove the hard stand, but you know what I mean? The whole thing will be redone. The timing of the insurance, the second part, yeah, that was a consideration, and we initiated that policy prior to unconditional or just prior to unconditional. So we had this overlap up until settlement. So as you had mentioned to me, Mish, when we were chatting, we went from an intention to buy to we're sort of moving into the contractual space of commitment. The commitment to buy now is there. DD is done. And so it is a grey area in that space. And that period between unconditional settlement, let's call it 6 weeks, that's not charged to the vendor who is the tenant in terms of outgoings. I wore that because technically speaking, you start from settlement date. But for me, it was a risk management. It was a risk management decision.
I mean, that's what insurance is all about, really. You're buying risk. And in fact, we've been through some episodes where we've had buyers who haven't taken that insurance and something has gone pear-shaped 2 days before they settled. And it hasn't been a pretty picture, because what happens is the liability is transferred to the buyer. From the time that you go unconditional, that liability is transferred to you. And that is why you need to take that insurance and be serious about that insurance. Make sure that it's the right insurance. And Andrew, I think what you did at that time is we negotiated that very tactfully with the seller. As you say, they were underinsured, they were owner-occupied, they hadn't realized what the bigger picture is and what the greater risk was. So you did the right thing by very dadly, and thank goodness the seller's agent he could see the sense in upping that insurance. And the section that you had to wear, it was minimal, realistically, over the period of time, 6 weeks. It was a couple of $1,000s. Well worth it, was it?
No, yeah, you slept well at night, put it that way, for that period of time. Yes. So, no, it was good. And look, if you're going to do something like this, you've got to get serious about it.
Yeah.
Don't try and cut corners on it. Something will possibly bite you. It may not, but it may.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, do you remember what the processes were and what you had to go through from the time that you went? You're now gone unconditional. Okay, we've sorted out the leases, we've done the negotiations, we've done due diligence, we've had hydraulics checked and gas tanks and roller shutter doors, and we're happy. We're now going unconditional. So, bing, bing, first celebration. From unconditional to settlement, there was quite an extended period. Do you remember what you had to go through? What were you concerned about? What were you chasing through that period?
Actually, there wasn't a lot of concern because we'd done a lot of work up front.
Yeah.
That insurance policy was in that period. They'd agreed to all our goings and insurance and the two quotes, which we got, and chose the cheaper of the two, which I was comfortable with. But that actually came up during that period of time. I was thinking, gee, well, where's this leave us? Because I've actually already paid for it. So we're already gone unconditional.
Yes.
But it was fine. It was just a conversation. But because we'd done so much work up front, and that's, you asked me earlier about learnings, that's a big learning. Just digging in deep for that period of time. Right from the time of offer acceptance, you're starting to look at contracts and things, to due diligence. You can get a lot of things ticked, and which you should anyway.
Sure.
Anyway, and the bank was very good. I had pre-approval. We kept going back. I kept rechecking that with the finance broker and the bank, and I was from an equity, the debt perspective. I'm relatively conservative, to be honest, compared to some others. So I was always comfortable with that as well. So that wasn't such a concern. Legally, I guess we had just had some, T's to cross and I's to dot as well in that space, but it wasn't anything to do with, I guess, disagreement or conflict or whatever you may want to call it.
What were those T's and I's?
Oh, look, they were more just regulatory, legal. Like, obviously, we'd gone through the due diligence process from a legal view as well, with a lot of background checking and so forth through the legal partners that you'd referred us to. So quite comfortable with all of that. Yeah, to be honest, Mish, I actually can't recall, because and that sort of indicates to me that it wasn't really a lot left over to do.
No, I think it was fairly free sailing at that stage, because as you rightly said, we did most of the work before, and it was just a matter of seller solicitor and buyer solicitor agreeing, coming to terms, going through the process together with finance, having all of that lining up and slipstreamed, running together and happening at the same time, just making those agreements and getting them running on track at the same time. Yeah.
Another learning I would take away just on reflection, which is, in my past life, I owned a business with a couple other guys, and we did a lot of lease work as tenants, and we were in the recruitment space, so we're in the office sector. Right. We've had leases in Singapore, Melbourne, Sydney, and I've looked over a lot of those and negotiated them and done the legals and so forth. But it was interesting being on the other side of it this time around, as it was the first time. But that experience definitely helped. So it wasn't completely foreign to me looking at that document. I just know you've got to get through that document and make sure you're comfortable with it. So that was a learning to reflect on as well. It's, if you're someone who's listening to this, who may own a business, who may be thinking about buying commercial property in a personal sense, that experience you may have from leases that you've got, you can definitely use that. It's transferable to someone, depending on what the asset is you're buying.
No, certainly, absolutely. And I'm the first one to say, hey, bring in all your experience, because everybody comes to the table with different life experiences. You're in different journeys. So, I don't know everything that there is to know. There's a lot of people bring in information and expertise or experience in different areas, just like you did in that leasing space. As you say, it was different being on the other side of the bench, but at least you have that knowledge, you know what you're looking for, So I'm always open to, Bring your knowledge and experience to the table, because this is your deal at the end of the day. I am just guiding you through it. That's all I am. I'm the rudder, you the ship. Seriously.
Well, you're probably underplaying with your hand there, Mish, a bit, but a little bit more than that. But yeah, no, look, I'm someone, and I think I mentioned I like to get active and learn and so forth. So get involved but no, I was asking you a lot of questions.
You were asking a lot of questions, and great questions, really good questions. And I think you said it right in the beginning. This is a team sport. We've got a good, solid team behind us that, can answer those questions. Every single question has got an answer to it. And thank goodness we got a great team that we work with. My team at Revolve Commercial, I think, have been incredibly supportive in helping every single person to get over that line, yourself included. I think you were dealing with all the guys, Paula, Moses, right throughout the whole journey. So kudos to them. Kudos to...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, no, it was good. Good experience.
Andrew, the biggest question that I want to ask you is, it's like a bit of a build-up. You know that we're coming up for settlement, and what is the feeling when the solicitor phoned you, sent you a message, email, and said, boom, it is now settled? How did that feel?
It was good. It's bloody great, actually. No, I was at lunch, actually, in Manly, in Sydney.
Yeah.
And I think I was at an early Christmas party. We settled on the 24th of November from memory. And you got the call and had a quick conversation. And I went, fantastic. Yeah. Thanks very much for all your help. And she explained a few things that, I'll see coming through on paperwork. And that was it. I text my wife and family and said, right, yeah, we own an industrial property in Townsville now. So... yeah, life's changed a little bit, but yeah. So it was good. It was really good. Yeah.
Great feeling, isn't it? My analogy of that is for a woman falling pregnant, going through pregnancy and giving birth. Because when you give birth, it's like when that property settles, and it's like a falling in love moment.
I'm sure it's similar, but I just can't quite relate to it for some reason.
Oh, come on, Andrew.
Yeah.
You are a parent. I'm sure you were there when your kids were born.
Yeah, I was there. It was a bit different in my father's day. He was out fixing fences. He was fencing when I think I was born, or my brother or sister was born, and I was there for all of them, like 3 daughters. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Good experience. Same sort of experience where it's just a feeling of, wow, I've done this, and it's and now the fun starts happening. So now you own the property. You've been collecting rent for a while. You're going through the trials and tribulations. Any problems that have crawled up? Anything that you're not happy with, or you feel that it's free sailing?
No, it's fine, really. Because the tenant knows that building so well. They're just running their business. They've been there for years running it. So that's a big plus. That is actually potentially a big plus from a sale leaseback perspective. You've got someone who knows how to look after the building and operate. They've got their processes and systems. We had the Townsville Council call me or drop me a note about water usage had gone up significantly since the last rates, and they just wanted to point me towards it, and it pointed me towards the meter and so forth. Based on meter readings. So we chatted directly about that with the tenant, and they went and did some checking. The meter is fine, it is working according to that checking. So we turned it off overnight. We checked it in the morning. We did that a number of times over the weekend. I got the bill, sent it to them. It may just be that they're really pumping out a lot of product at the moment, and selling it. And so water, given the nature of their business, water is important, and off they go. So that hasn't been a problem, but it was flagged as one, and a possible one. Again, come back to that point. Nothing's ever as good as it seems. Or bad as it seems. But it may not be as good as it seems. So it's just something that comes up. Don't overthink it, but check it.
But realistically, water is a consumable expense. Tenant pays for it, so you bring it to the tenant's attention, and realistically, they need to sort it out. You know,
they do, Mish. But what was on my mind wasn't so much on my mind, that part of it.
Yeah.
What was on my mind was, okay, is there something structurally bigger happening inside?
Yes, of course.
The property.
Yeah.
And it's, they're happy to pay the water bills or whatever, but then they leave one day and you go, oh my goodness, there's something bigger happening here. So that was sort of on my mind. But
you got to run the test, you got to do the right thing, you got to make sure that that there are no bursts in pipes.
Yeah.
That's where you're going with that. So you did the right thing there, yeah?
Yeah. So we'll continue on. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just run through the date. We started this journey on the 24th of the 4th, where we sent the offer to purchase in for the first time. And we got the contract on the 11th of the 5th. So it was quite a time period between the 24th to the 11th to get that contract. So it's a little bit of negotiation over there. Valuation came in on the 18th of the 5th, so that was fairly soon afterwards, but we knew that we needed that valuation. We'd been speaking to them. We finally received the contract on the 31st of the 8th, and that was that time period where we extracted ourselves out of this property. You went and you looked at the other property, and then we came back in again. All right?
Yeah.
And we sent the second offer in on the 8th of the 8th. So we've now gone from May to August, and this is now round 2. We need an extension to finance to the 19th of October. I'm just giving some time frames to give people an idea. And final settlement was on the 25th of the 10th.
Yeah.
So all in all, it was a journey from the 4th to the 10th, so around about 6 months. Not the usual time frame for a property acquisition. However, you had that hiatus in the middle and then came back into it. So all in all, probably about 3 months that we were doing active negotiating. And that's pretty much the time frame from start to finish. So Andrew, what's next? Exit strategies. What do we look at with this property in terms of tenanting exit, or rather exiting tenant?
Yeah, sure. The number one is have a good relationship with the tenants. So be a good business partner in that sense, with things that come up and so forth, because that's just building goodwill, better communication, because that all helps when you get to that stage, and they're potentially going to be more open. So we technically have a 6-month window there for them to let us know what are we going to do, really exercising this option, and where are you coming or going, and so forth. And so we can sort of formally have that conversation and get the wheels rolling if they decided it's time to move, which is fine. Or just have some availability and so forth, where agents can work with the tenant, with potential tenants and so on. But informally, you can actually start talking before that. Obviously, you can have a conversation 12 months out. How are you traveling? How's the new build going? Where are you at, do you think? Just curious, obviously, as to what your thinking might be. As simple as that.
Yeah, and that's what we spoke about, and something that we insisted about in the lease is to the numbers in the lease and the legalities are basically that 6 months. But if you're aware 12 months in advance, then you can start, speaking to a couple of agents in the area, who's out there, who's looking, who's moving. What are the changes that are happening in the area, and potentially put this in front of mind for another tenant coming in.
Yeah.
I want to ask you the last question about your cash flow. So we did projections and we did numbers, and this is now 7.35% yielding property. You're receiving that rental. From a monetization point of view, is it working out for you? Is it a good thing? Was it a good thing that you bought this property from a financial point of view, monetary wise?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So cash flow positive, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's even with rates at their peak. I haven't had a rate increase I've been in on the same rate, basically. which is about 6.74 I'm on, and it's cash flow positive. I've actually, I guess, resting some money on that loan whilst I decide, on what the next steps are, next property, etc. So I'm actually, got quite a big buffer there now. So, but it's only whilst I make that decision. Really, it's not permanent. It's in a redraw facility, so that's fine. But even without that, if you just went in with what you had when you first started with your initial equity, I'm definitely on top. So 180k net. I think from memory, Mish, it's about 70k positive cash flow without that excess that I have in there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, which is great. It's all good. It's doing the job and just be positive about looking after the tenant. Be positive about the future. We can fall into this uncertainty and, are we going to get it re-tenanted, which is obviously a big thing in commercial property, I think, as well. It's probably another reason people, are wary of it. But it's, there's a lot going on. You've got to be positive, and as long as you don't have the fundamentals wrong, where you've got the rent wrong versus the market, that's something you don't want to do. But you do that work up front. As to actually getting the property re-tenanted, well, that's different. You do that due diligence up front. You look at vacancy rates and you talk to people in the market. And it's something I did actually alongside working with you. I got introduced to a owner of quite a large accounting firm in Townsville, and we went and had a chat. He's quite influential in the community, very involved with the Cowboys and other parts of Townsville. And we really discussed what's going on in Townsville. He had no interest in giving me a positive answer, which was good. It's what I wanted. He was just saying, well, this is what's going on.
What's he saying about it?
We got net migration. You've got the military moving there. You've got green hydrogen energy projects going on. You've got the ag sector is strong anyway across Australia. You've got energy full stop projects going on around there. So net migration, strong. And it's one of the more affordable and large regional cities in Australia that people when they migrate out of, say the Melbournes and the Sydneys and so forth, and they take their equity out of their house, they can go there. It's just one of many places, but they can go there and actually live a pretty good life.
Yes.
From that perspective too. So, and those things then drive other things. They drive more health care. They might drive more services, which then in turn drives more private property, which needs private businesses which need
properties, and it's a knock-on effect, and they need services. They need tires, cars, fuel, doctors, lawyers, hairdressers, barbers, you name it, and it's a whole knock-on effect. And that's basically that's kind of where Townsville's going, really. They really are wanting to beef it up and make it a standalone city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Magnetic Island's up there too. Obviously, that draws some people into it. Yeah.
Well, overall, great experience, Andrew. From our perspective, working with you was fantastic. I'm pleased to hear this property is bringing you back $70,000 net cash in your bank. Happy days. I call that lollipop money. And for what it costs, where you've been, and the rates, I think you've done incredibly well. I think it's been a good acquisition. And when are you ready for the next one?
Yeah, I'm just getting some ducks in a row on that one at the moment. But certainly, itchy feet, ready to go. Well, ready to go in some respects, but just got to sort out a couple of other things before I go. But I'm browsing and looking and talking to a few people around properties. I've investigated a couple, but a couple of things put me off. And this is probably just a final note. I looked at a property in, where was it? It's in Morningside, actually, in Brisbane.
All right. Yep.
And I just inquired about it. But what I learned from it, it's a retail business inside an industrial strata.
Right.
Building. Because it's retail, you can't claim the land tax back as an outgoing on that building. I learnt that, and then I reread the EIM that states that no, you can't reclaim land tax. And then the sinking fund came into that as well, and they underestimated the sinking fund amount. So what looked like a solid asset, good location, business had been there for a while, the numbers started to change a bit. I went, don't think it's quite where I want to go, given that. Yeah.
And that, I think, again, it's doing the hard work, knowing what you don't know.
Yeah.
Learning what you don't know. Those little fundamentals is where a lot of people get caught out.
Yeah.
So, good finding.
But very positive about the future, Mish. No, the journey's not finished, and there is a portfolio component next. So it's different thinking, not crossing over your leases so they don't correspond, and really managing. I will say in the next deal, one thing that is on my mind is that any property can go dark. The tenant leaves, and you haven't seen one. So with that 2-year lease we've got, that I am mindful of that in terms of committing financially elsewhere, and just how much buffer would I leave myself in that other property, in the original property we've spoken about, to cover that but still move forward in a second property. Yeah. So that all comes into your thinking. If that was a 3-year lease, wouldn't be bothering me, really, to be honest. Yeah. So
I think your plus card in this one is that you know who the tenant is. You've got open communication with the tenant. You've already established that know, like, and trust relationship with him. He knows that he can speak to you. You know that you can speak to him. And he's on a journey of development and meeting certain dates in order to move his business out into his new plant. And there's setbacks to that. And the great thing is you can have that conversation with him, and he can pretty much see within about, let's call it 9 to 12 months, what his projection is going to be, whether he is going to be moving out within the second year term. And that's the thing that we liked about this building. So it gives you that timing,
Yeah, absolutely.
Move on. Yeah. And also the fact that the building can be broken up into various different, you can rent this out to 4 different tenants, really, because it's got so many different spaces,
Yeah, definitely has versatility in that.
Strategies there, yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Andrew. Wonderful speaking to you again. And stay with the journey, enjoy the cash flow, and let's see what's next on the cards.
Thanks, Mish. Thanks for your help. Great speaking to you.
All right. See ya.